everybody. Welcome back to the Succinct Psychology, little intro to psychology course. My name is Prescott. Again, I'm here with Psychcinct, Succinct Psychology, and today we are going to be starting Chapter 3, Biopsychology. Again, this is the OpenStax Psychology 2E textbook that we're going to be going through. And so this is a bit of a longer chapter, so it'll probably be one or two extra little videos. But without further ado, let's get started. So, first slide here, we have biopsychology. That's the unit. Biopsychology explores the biological mechanisms that underlie behavior. Among many things, it studies genetics, focusing on how inherited genes can affect not just the physiological, but psychological traits of a person. So physiological is physical aspects, where psychology is mind. The structure and function of the nervous system, and how the nervous system interacts with the endocrine system. So here we have a nice picture. So different brain imaging techniques provide scientists with insight into different aspects of how the human brain functions. So left to right, we have a PET scan, positron emission tomography, so right here, a CT scan, computed tomography, and an fMRI, functional magnetic resonance imaging. So these three are types of scans, obviously, and we'll go more into depth about each of these later in the unit, so I won't touch on it right now. All right, human genetics. Studying human genetics can help researchers understand the biological basis underlying the different behaviors, thoughts, and reactions of humans. So, why do two people infected by the same disease have different outcomes? Are there genetic components to psychological disorders such as depression? And how are genetic diseases passed through family lines? So these are kind of some questions you ask when talking about human genetics. Continuing on, we have the theory of evolution, which I'm sure you guys have heard about and read about in your high school science courses. So Charles Darwin explored the concept of inheritance of traits throughout generations in his theory of evolution through natural selection. So the organisms that are better suited for their environment will survive and reproduce, while those that are poorly suited for their environment will die off. So that's kind of his theory there. Characteristics and behaviors that impact survival and reproduction. Those that help protect against predators, those that increase access to food, and those that help offspring to live. So here's a little quote from Charles Darwin. "It is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the one that is most adaptable to change." So that's very obviously just saying that it doesn't matter how strong an organism is, it's the one that's able to adapt to changes in its environments. So that's the theory of evolution. Nice little refresher for you. So here we have Charles Darwin. So in 1859, Charles Darwin proposed his theory of evolution by natural selection in his book On the Origin of Species. So figure B here, the book contains just one illustration. This diagram shows how species evolve over time through natural selection. And so you can see it's a pretty complex little graph he's got here, but just kind of breaking down how species change and evolve over time. Continuing with the theory of evolution, we have a little question here. So why have certain genetic diseases that cause people to die not become less common? So for an example, we have sickle cell anemia. So sickle cell anemia is a genetic condition in which red blood cells take on a crescent-like shape affecting how they function. This causes many people to die at an early age, but it is still common among people of African descent. Carriers of only one copy of the sickle cell gene are thought to be immune from malaria, a deadly disease which is common in Africa. In this example, carrying the gene makes a person better suited for their environment. So this is kind of explaining, it's a genetic disease and it causes people to die early, but in their environment, it's actually beneficial to have one copy of the sickle cell gene. So that's why it hasn't been, phased out of, that population. So here we have a picture. So you can see normal blood cells, nice and round, and sickle-shaped blood cells. You can see they're shaped like sickles. Normal blood cells travel freely through the blood vessels, while sickle-shaped cells form blockages, preventing blood flow, which is obviously bad, can lead to heart attacks, blood clots, just things you don't generally want to have to deal with, if you want to live long at least. Genetic variation. So the genetic difference between individuals. So genetic variation contributes, sorry, I'm slipping on my words, to a species' adaptation to its environment. So it begins when an egg, containing 23 chromosomes, is fertilized by a sperm, also containing 23 chromosomes. Now, a chromosome is a long strand of genetic information known as DNA. Now, DNA is deoxyribonucleic acid, or DNA, is a helix-shaped molecule made of nucleotide base pairs. In each chromosome, sequences of DNA make up genes. And a gene is a sequence of DNA that controls or partially controls physical characteristics known as traits. So that'd be your eye color, your hair color, etc. A gene may have multiple possible variations or alleles, a specific version of a gene. So a specific gene may code for hair color, and the different alleles of that gene affect what the hair color will be. Here we have genotype versus phenotype. So figure A is a genotype refers to the genetic makeup of an individual based on the genetic material, DNA, inherited from one's parents. Now, a phenotype describes an individual's observable characteristics, such as hair color, skin color, height, and build. So genotypes are kind of like this cellular genetic material you can't physically see, whereas a phenotype is, well, what you can physically see. You can think of it as physical. So it's something that the naked eye can see. You can tell somebody's skin color and hair color and whatnot. Next, we have dominant versus recessive alleles. So the majority of inheritable traits are controlled by more than just one gene, and in such cases, they are known as polygenic traits. Some traits are controlled by one gene. Alleles can be dominant or recessive. In the example below, A is the dominant allele for flower color, purple, and A, so lowercase, is the recessive allele for flower color, white. So possession of a dominant allele will always result in expression of that phenotype. This could be inherited from one parent. So here you have dominant, recessive, capital A, lowercase a, or both parents. So two dominant alleles. The phenotype of a recessive allele will only be physically expressed if the person is homozygous for that allele, meaning they inherited a recessive allele from both parents. So here you have the two recessive alleles, lowercase a and lowercase a. So heterozygous is consisting of two different alleles, so dominant and recessive, and homozygous is consisting of two identical alleles, so dominant, both recessive. And so here we have a nice picture kind of breaking that down, making it more digestible. So A, the dominant allele, is for the color purple in the flower, while the recessive allele, lowercase a, is the allele for the white color. So here we have, if you have the two dominant alleles, you're going to get a purple flower. But if you have two of the recessive alleles, you'll get a white flower. But if you have a dominant and a recessive, it's going to be the dominant allele color, which is purple. So we're going to go more into this with Punnett squares. This is also something you guys probably learned about at some point. So here we have two figures, A and B. B is a nice cleft chin. So a Punnett square is a tool used to predict how genes will interact in the production of offspring. The capital B represents the dominant allele, and the lowercase b represents the recessive allele. In the example of the cleft chin, where B, so dominant, capital B, is cleft chin, whenever a pair or wherever a pair contains the dominant allele B, you can expect a cleft chin phenotype. And again, phenotype is the physical things that you can see. So you can expect a smooth chin phenotype only when there are two copies of the recessive allele, so lowercase b, lowercase b. So in this figure, you can see the cleft chin is shown here, and it's an inherited trait. And so to break down this Punnett square thing, in case it seems confusing, it's actually really simple. So you have two axes here, and here's the father's allele, so he has two recessive alleles, and then so he's homozygous recessive. And then you have the mother, who is heterozygous, and she has a dominant and a recessive. So all you have to do is, make these four little squares and put the two parents' alleles, on each side. So you have your lowercase b, uppercase B, lowercase b, and then all you do is drop this capital B down and then bring over the father's recessive. So in this circumstance, that would result in the dominant allele making itself present. And that's just all you really have to do. I won't get too much into it, but again, just drop, bring over. It's going to have the dominant allele, and then drop, bring over, recessive, recessive. So pretty straightforward. So continuing with Punnett squares, In this Punnett square, N represents the dominant allele, and P represents the recessive allele that is associated with PKU. If two individuals mate who are both heterozygous, so you have the dominant and the recessive, for the allele associated with PKU, their offspring have a 25% chance of expressing the PKU phenotype. So where do harmful genes like PKU come from? Some are the result of mutations, and a mutation is a sudden permanent change in a gene. Many mutations are harmful, but some can also be beneficial. So, breaking it down more, here we have another Punnett square. Same thing, set it up. So you have the two heterozygous parents. In this Punnett square, N represents the normal allele, and P represents the recessive allele that is associated with PKU. If two individuals mate who are both heterozygous for the allele associated with PKU, their offspring have a 25% chance of expressing the PKU phenotype. So you can see here, just remember, drop, bring over, drop, bring over, drop, bring over. So there's only a 25% chance, because 25, 50, 75, 100, that the offspring will express the PKU phenotype. Continuing on. So we'll make this the last slide for this video, but we'll continue in the next. But so anyways, gene-environment interactions. So nature and nurture work together like complex pieces of a human puzzle. The interaction of our environment and genes makes us the individuals we are. There are many different ways to look at this interaction. So we have range of reaction, which asserts our genes set the boundaries within which we can operate, and our environment interacts with the genes to determine where in that range we will fall. Then we have genetic environmental correlation, which is a view of gene-environment interaction that asserts our genes affect our environment, and our environment influences the expression of our genes. And then we have epigenetics, which is a study of gene-environment interactions, such as how the same genotype leads to different phenotypes. So we will stop there for today. Again, my name is Prescott, and I'm here with Psychcinct, Succinct Psychology, and I hope to see you guys in the next video where we will continue Unit 3. All right, have a good one. Bye.